So this is our first MAA panel or fireside chat, as I'm kind of thinking of it. And I'm super excited to chat with you guys. So I want to just thank each of you for joining me. We've got Abe, we have Katelyn, and we have KarenAnn. Okay, so let's start with a quick intro, just in case any friends listening in haven't had the pleasure to meet you guys yet. I want to start with Abe, just share a quick about you, kind of where you're at today and how you got there.
Yeah, sure. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. I'm with Keller Williams' team called the Neil and Neil team. Been in real estate for just a little bit under 2 years now, and was in prior sales before that for 18 years in car sales. Um, I don't know if you want like transactional numbers at all, or you want to just kind of,
Sure.
stick with that as far as the basics.
Let's get to that next.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I do want to hear about it, but let's get to that next.
Great. All right.
Thanks, Abe. Welcome, welcome. Katelyn, you're up.
So I'm Katelyn Henderson with Parks in Hendersonville, Tennessee, just north of Nashville. I'm going into year 3 in the business after a lifetime of saying I would never get into real estate. I was raised by a realtor, but didn't have the perspective of what that can provide for you until adulthood. After I had checked all the boxes and got the big shiny salary career and discovered there's something more here. And I believe in helping people that want more for themselves and the ones they love most. And to me, the most noble way to do that is real estate.
Love that. Thanks, Katelyn. Okay, KarenAnn, you're next.
Oh my gosh, I love that too. And I do not know how I can follow you guys. You are amazing. I'm KarenAnn, and I am coming up on 6 years in real estate. I am in a small town outside of Athens, Georgia, about an hour and a half north of Atlanta. And I got into this business similar to Katelyn. I had my mom was licensed, and she was like, go get your real estate license. You can have a flexible schedule and like be home with your kiddos, which I was homeschooling at the time. And I was like, yeah, I can totally do that and make lots of money, and it's going to be great. Little did I know that path was going to be a lot harder than I expected it to be, but it has been literally life-changing, and it's been a really, really great decision for me.
Oh, I love that.
Awesome.
All of you guys are in market authority, which is awesome. Katelyn, you've been in for a little over a year. Abe, probably a year and a half-ish.
Close, yeah.
Yeah. And then KarenAnn, you were part of our beta group who started back in January 2020, which is super cool.
Yes.
So we've kind of have the whole journey here. And one thing that's really interesting, and one thing that I wanted to hone in on, was a little bit about like what different seasons of growth and what seasons of growth can look like for different real estate agents. And I think that that's a really important thing to talk about as we go into 2023, because we're going into what I'm hoping is going to be a more normal market. We're going to have a little bit more balance. I think there will still be some things that are challenging, what with the state of the economy, the state of the world, of course. But we're kind of leaving that like post-pandemic chaos that was 2021 and 2022. And I think that what we're going to see is a lot of agents who maybe are not accustomed to a more normal pace are going to start wondering what normal actually means and looks like for them. And so my goal during this conversation is to provide a couple of different perspectives of, what business looks like for us in all different corners of the country. So I'm super excited to kind of lean into that side of the discussion. And where I want to start is just kind of looking back. So what I want to hear from you guys is how last year went, and maybe share some like really big wins last year, and even maybe some big losses too, which I can always share mine, but I want to start with you guys, and we'll start with Abe.
Yeah, sure. One thing about San Antonio, it's actually pretty interesting. We're a very well, I guess what you'd call insulated market. We just recently had our housing forecast. They talked a lot about the stats here in town, and it's pretty interesting. On average, like our board just came out with the numbers for San Antonio, and on average in San Antonio, year over year from December to December, our numbers price like median price and average price actually went up still from a year, 2021. And so I know a lot of markets have gone down. And so San Antonio is pretty well insulated in terms of kind of how that's helped. I was like really, really buyer heavy when I started in real estate in 2021, as I think most anybody who started that year was, just because of the number of buyers that were out there. And it was one of those things where I only had a few listings. It was mostly Sphere. I didn't necessarily really learn a lot at that time, just because those listings in general just didn't stay on the market long. Was like pretty much anything, came and went very fast. And so for 2022, what was interesting is that I started out like just really, I kind of, I don't know, under the gun, I guess, thinking like, okay, I'm going to just, shoot for the moon. And I had all these transactions from 2021. And then in 2022, the first quarter didn't start out that great for me. It was okay, but not great. And then my team, and I know we've discussed this a little bit on our calls and in the group, but our team switched my focus from buyers to sellers. And it really just kind of put me at what I felt at the time, at least, was a disadvantage, just because I didn't have that much experience, was really having to completely learn a whole new skill and really just do it on the fly after having probably one of the worst quarters that I'd ever had as well. And so that shift, though, it wound up actually working out really well for the second half of the year. And it was because I was learning the things that I needed to learn. And as the market started to shift from more buyers, as the rates were going up, to more sellers, it actually wound up benefiting me, because at the end of the year, I was able to do a lot more listings. I was able to work with a lot more clients who, even just the number of appointments that I went on for listing presentations was such a help, because it enabled me to really polish my skills and conversations around listings. So for me, my numbers ultimately were not as good as they were the year before, and it was kind of a tough pill to swallow, because initially my whole goal ending 2021 was like, oh, next year I want to break through this next ceiling. And I had to really put it in perspective that even if my numbers didn't break through a ceiling, I still did. Basically, I was still able to, increase the level of my skills. I was able to take on a whole new, skill set overall, and really push my business in a very different direction.
I love that perspective. And another one of those big wins was also really diving into like your personal database and making sure that a significant portion of your business, at least, was coming from like self-generated business, or that was at least a focus of yours, right?
Yeah, for sure. So what happened in the first, 9 months of 2021, or the last 9 months of 2021, when I got into real estate, was I think I only did like, I don't know, 5 or 6 transactions out of, 33 or something that I did in that first year. And then last year wound up actually doing about 40% almost of my business out of direct from database, repeat client stuff, Sphere, and those items. So yeah.
That's huge. That's huge. And that'll just keep growing, which is awesome.
Yeah, this year I've already started out with, I think, more than that now. So in terms of what I have in the pipeline and on the market.
Okay. Okay. So big picture, loving it. Thanks, Abe. So Katelyn, why don't you give us a little bit of a look how last year went? Just kind of like a high-low.
Cool. So wins or highs would be, I learned so much this last year. There was nothing textbook about, honestly, any of my closings last year. I had 8, which was the most I had ever had, which my goal was 13. Again, nothing about those were traditional. So now I've shifted my focus. Can I just have a couple that are, semi-predictable? But that's the thing. None of them are predictable. That's fine. I would have to say, learning so much, and now I'm reaching a point, I'm noticing, like, I'll reach out to my title attorney to confirm my understanding on something, And just this last week, he's like, you know it. He's like, you know way more than you think you do. And now it's just coming out. I don't have to think about it anymore. So that's been really encouraging. And then as far as like loses, I don't believe anything happens in vain as far as like negatives from the last year, because all of it can propel you to greater growth and lessons moving forward. But my biggest self-reflection when we were transitioning into 2023 is recognizing I said yes to a lot of the wrong things last year, both in business and personally. And this year I'm just discovered if it is outside of my why or my business, I'm going to start learning to respectfully say no.
I love that. Can you give us, would you feel comfortable giving us an example?
Absolutely. You want one of each, like business and professional?
Sure.
So business wise, I used to just white knuckle any opportunity that presented itself to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have learned numerous lessons the hard way, but two really significant ones that will forever be part of my real estate story. And it's not enough for me to just accept a listing. If it is outside of something I can get behind and feel confident representing, same way, if you're going to sell something, I believe you need to believe in it. Mm-hmm. And if you don't believe in a property, for example, I'm going to start humbly letting myself let someone else have that opportunity.
Okay.
So that would be the business one. And then personally, I wear a lot of hats, always have. Sometimes it's a strength, sometimes it's a curse, but trying to navigate wanting to be involved, because when people see that you're someone that's a go-getter and you're going to be like a dog with a bone, like with accomplishing certain things, they want you to be a part of all of their things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I said yes to a lot of those things. I was on multiple different committees last year. I worked in different places in our church, and I've just found a place to gracefully step back outside of my couple like heart things. Beyond that, my clients have to come first this year.
That's so cool. You know, it's interesting. Those are all such growth aspects, right? But they're things that happen behind the scenes before really big numbers tend to happen. And when you were sharing some of the situations, some of the transactions that you were having, and I was like, how is this possible, Katelyn? Like, what is happening? and I always wonder, like, how is like what is life gearing you up for? And you're learning these skills for a reason, because I'm with you, like every failure is something like leading you to something better. Like I actually have a really positive perception of failure and losses, because I'm always like, oh, good, a problem. What is this going to lead us to? Like it's interesting and it's exciting to me. Sometimes painful, but I have the same perception. And I just listen to that and I'm like, what are you gearing up for? What is this path leading you towards? Because you're going to need those skills for a reason.
It's exciting. I had a lender recently, he told me, because he just bust out laughing because another just off the wall situation happened. I called him to ask if it was normal because I'm still young in the business. Mm-hmm. And he just cackled laughing at me. And he said, Katelyn, I never know what I'm going to get when you call me, but I just know it's going to be fun. I'm like, oh gosh. So well, that continued.
Yeah, that says a lot about your ability to handle stressful situations and to lean into your own resilience and know that you can handle something that's coming for you, even if you know it might be a new situation. So I'm excited to see how that continues to serve you going forward, because those are great qualities in an agent.
Thank you.
Okay, KarenAnn, your turn. Give us a high-low. How'd it go last year, and what are we looking for going into this year?
Yeah. So last year was actually like a breakthrough year for me, which was very, very exciting. Lots of changes and challenges along the way, but I actually had my first six-figure year, which was a huge goal of mine since I got into the industry. And I'm so excited to say that I hit it. And I'm like, oh gosh, can I keep it up for next year? Right. Which I feel like I can, but I don't know. There's always like that little bit of doubt in the back of your head, like, nah, you can't do it, So that is something that I'm definitely trying to take into the new year is just, positivity and like the confidence and believing in yourself, because I can do it and I proved it to myself. So I need to continue to believe in it. But last year started off really weird. I was actually like randomly on a team because I had that like lack of confidence that I could do it. So I joined a team and I was like, I don't know why I did this. It's not a good fit. I left the team and I completely soared. I went really deep right back into market authority. I had my husband who officially joined me as my admin in 2020. We like really just, I don't know, we just went into it with a totally different mindset. And we put our plan together and we just literally trusted the process and watched it unfold, which was incredible. So I'm very, very excited about that. And some of my losses, I would say, would be that I was, I don't know, I hate to say that this is a loss. It is, but it's not. I don't know. It's challenging to like think about it this way, but I sort of lost myself in my business. So I like had these goals and I was pushing for these goals and I had so much change. We had just moved into a new house. In April, we decided to stop homeschooling our children, who we've always homeschooled. It wasn't just a pandemic thing. It was like a choice, a life choice situation. And so we decided not to homeschool them anymore. And that kind of was a loss, right? In ways for us emotionally. And we just went through all of these big changes. And I just feel like, where was I in all of this? It was just like, we have to make decision. We have to just, just live in the life every single day and just like working and doing everything with the kids. And I just feel like I kind of lost myself. But that's okay, because I've made a plan, gone back to my roots and made a plan to really like find myself again. So I like lost myself so much that I even like stopped cooking dinner. I was like delegating that to my husband, who should not have been something that should have been delegated to him. Because one, I love to cook, like truly. And he doesn't. So that just, it didn't make sense. And so we're kind of like getting back into this rhythm of like, oh, we can do this and we're having family time. It just looks different. And so I think kind of overcoming those changes in the midst of having this like breakthrough year where it's like, oh my gosh, I got my first like $1 million deal this year and I took my kids to Disney and like I just never could have imagined that before. So
wow. So it's so interesting how as we like reach new levels of growth and when we have those big breakthroughs, it's never like happening in a silo. It's always going to like cause ripple effects in other places of your life, because just the nature of being a real estate agent, it's so interwoven with our personal life and our day-to-day and the lifestyle that we choose to live. So that's really interesting. And I guess I didn't like think about it from that perspective, because like I was very, I was hearing about this as we were going through the year, but to hear it all kind of put together like that, I'm sure there was a lot to deal with. So kudos to you to keeping on top of everything in the midst of all that. That's hard.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it is hard. Thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate that.
It takes a certain kind of strength to navigate the changing winds of real estate for sure. But I feel like you guys all have that quality. And it's interesting to see it play out. I want to talk about kind of what's working right now and maybe some things that we've stopped. And I know you guys have kind of touched on it just in the stories that you're sharing, but what's working right now, Abe? What are you feeling really good about? What are you going to keep doing?
Sure. So what's working right now really well for me is really just a lot of one-on-one connection, like a lot of like really diving kind of into a lot of the engagement part of especially what we learn in Market Authority Academy is just that engagement part of it. And I think that that's what has really helped me with my Sphere business quite a bit. is pulling deals from like, okay, what can I do? What are the things that I can do to reach out to people, to set appointments, to get, face to face with somebody, to have a conversation. And because of that, I think I've gotten some referrals out of it. I've gotten, coffee meetings, and I'm taking the approach right now, especially with them, where I don't care if we're 12 months out. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm here to serve you in some way. A lot of the posts that I'm doing on social media, that's really been kind of my focus, has been, how can I serve you? What ways can I find to serve you? Whether it's helping you with something your family needs, whether it's helping with something, teaching you a little bit about real estate if you don't know anything about it, whether it's helping you to understand what you need to. And that's kind of morphed into, actually, about a month from now, I'm going to be hosting my first time buyer seminar.
Okay.
So that's going to be something that I'm doing for the first time. So that, I think, has worked probably more than anything else, is just, focusing on little things like just reaching out to people more through, for different reasons, birthdays, congratulations, things like that. I got a really sweet message from somebody the other day. It was one of my first clients in 2021. They just not only got engaged, but had a first child. She had her first child. And obviously, you know how that feels. And so when I reached out to her to talk about things, and congratulate her on all that, she wrote me back talking about how, like, she and her husband, or her soon-to-be husband, were just recently talking about how grateful they felt to have met me and become a friend of theirs and everything. And so, just deepening those relationships, I think, is really what has been working for me more than anything. And like I said, a lot of that is stuff that, I probably have been pretty good overall at relationships, but being part of Market Authority has really helped strengthen that understanding of how that works in this industry.
That's awesome. Was there a moment where you decided, like, this is where I need to lean into, or did it just kind of naturally start to lean more towards that way as time went on?
I think it just naturally started to lean into it. There was probably some realization last year when I needed to focus on, like, understanding listings and the seller side of things, where I realized I'd kind of gotten away from it.
Mhm.
And so I couldn't pinpoint an exact, like, moment, but there was definitely, probably, I would say in the summertime last year, when I started realizing that, like, I really need to start picking up the pace on strengthening those relationships and that skill.
I love that. Thanks, Abe. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Katelyn, what about you? What's working right now? What have you stopped? What are you going to keep doing?
So, an active lesson that I'm learning is to give myself a lot more grace than I have been. So, I'm recognizing that anytime I get unnecessarily disappointed or defeated in real estate, it is because of my own spoken or unspoken expectations that I've put on myself, whether they're fair or not.
Yeah.
So, that is an active thing that I'm cultivating.
Wow, I just want to take a second. You worded that so well, because I know that every single real estate agent has been there where they're like, wait, is this me, or is this like really reality? Like, say more.
So that's probably the biggest active evolving lesson right now. So thank you for that encouragement. And the biggest thing is kind of what Abe said, but reaching out to people directly and being more interested in them than wanting them to ask about me.
Mm-hmm.
We all as human beings want to be heard, seen, feel special. And so I've recently shifted, like, outside of my small inner circle. These people get all of me when I need to talk about me because they're safe and they've proven that they're trustworthy. But other than that, my goal is to be more curious about other people And I'm about to reveal one of my biggest secrets, but I have an unspoken game anytime I have an interaction with someone. I want to ask more questions and I want them to talk more. And after that exchange is over, I have a box in my mind of like, okay, did I win that game or did I lose? Did I overtalk or did I ask more questions?
That's amazing.
That's great.
That ties into this theme that you're sharing of like really like the growth journey that you're on is very internal, which I love. And to be able to trust the process and trust that pouring into others will come back to you is a shift into that abundance mindset that's really, really important in sales. We talk about like the commission breath and like the chasing after every lead and trying to force it to happen. And it sounds like what you've really decided is right for you is just allowing yourself to genuinely pour into others, trust the process, and know that ultimately that's going to bring and attract more opportunities to you. Am I speaking for you, or does that kind of feel authentic?
That absolutely resonates. And I'll give credit to 2 books that you and I have talked about, and that's Go Giver.
Okay.
I read it twice last year, and I recommend everyone, if you're going to be in this business that's a huge one. And then The Gap and the Gain.
The Gap and the Gain. That's a good one.
Those 2 really opened my mind up to not be so like, well, what's in it for me? And it's shifted me into this, like, how can I give more than I'm going to earn and just trust the fact that that's going to come back at some point, and I'm surrendered to what that has to look like.
I love that. I love how much in alignment you and Abe are on your journeys right now. That's so cool.
Well, it's so funny. I'll just speak, and I don't want to like cut off the time that KarenAnn's going to have, but like one of the things that what she said reminds me of, and you brought up the whole commission breath thing, is that it's probably one of the hardest things in sales in general, regardless of whether it's in real estate or not, is to detach yourself from the transaction, from like the ultimate end of it. Like to understand that, I'm not here to get to closing. I'm here to serve you in some way. I'm here to help you in some way. And it's probably one of the most difficult things for people to do. Even after years of being in sales, it's difficult to do. And especially when, you have put yourself in a position where maybe you've been struggling a little bit and you're really just trying to kind of get momentum and get something going. It's so hard to remember that detaching yourself from the outcome of the situation that you're in is really the best way to put everything you have into that person. And then the other thing I was going to say is that it's so funny too about like getting other people to talk more than you talk, because one of the things that I learned a long time ago is everybody's favorite word. You know what everybody's favorite word is, right?
Me.
Their name. It's their own name.
Yeah.
and so we all want to hear about ourselves. We all want to be able to talk about ourselves, and learning to understand that we can't do that when we're trying to serve somebody else is super important.
I love that. I love that perspective. And I agree. And I think that one thing that helped trigger that for me was one thing that I tell myself a lot, just in the same vein. I think that everybody just has to find a way to like build context. One thing that I say a lot is our work starts at the closing table. So like once we get to that closing table, that's when our work really begins, because that's when it's about like cultivating that lifelong relationship. And that's where service really comes into play, because it's no longer transactional work. It's those checkpoints they're both saying like what's up? Where are you in life? Where is the journey taking you? And how can I kind of provide value along the way? I love that, you guys.
Great.
All right, KarenAnn, what's working now? What have you stopped? What are you going to keep doing?
Yeah, well, I've just got to say thanks so much for having that conversation, because I'm over here in the back of my head. I just had a conversation with Stefanie about a seller of mine, and now I feel like I've got to change my perspective here a little bit on that situation. So thank you.
They make it difficult, don't they?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do, but yeah, you're right. It is all about service and making sure that we are acting in the best light for them. So thank you for that perspective. I really, truly needed to hear that today. So I appreciate that. But what is working and what have I stopped? So this year, my focus is just to continue to dial in those systems that that I've been implementing for the past couple of years. My big goal is just to get better and better and better and more dialed into each of the systems so that it truly feels like it just truly becomes extremely habitual. A lot of what I do is already very habitual. But I just want to dial it in further. And I don't want to have decision fatigue. I've got a lot going on, and I need to just know exactly what I need to be doing every single day and exactly who I need to be talking to every single day. And so it's just all about defining those systems. And so far, we've done a really good job of implementing those, and I'm very excited about, kind of how it's going. It doesn't feel overwhelming. It really feels like it's going smooth, and I think that that's just the magic of iterating everything that I've learned in market authority year after year after year. So it's really special to just go, oh, I can just change like just a little bit here, and I can see it really improve. So that I think is something super major, just to make sure that I've got everything dialed in. Something new that I'm adding this year is we moved into a neighborhood after living on some kind of land with not really many neighbors around. So I'm going to try my hand at farming my neighborhood and like really showing up and meeting my neighbors, which I tried to do a little bit last year, and jumped into a very dramatic HOA board, but that's okay. I like quickly removed myself from that situation. Yeah. So anyways, I'm gonna try that, and we've kind of started a plan for that. And just once again, thanks to all these systems that I have implemented, that really has been an easy transition so far. What am I going to stop? What have I stopped? I actually had a really good answer for this, and then I got distracted by that perspective that Katelyn had. So something that I am going to stop doing this year is I am going to stop. This is kind of opposite of you guys. So like where you're like diving more into relationships and everything, but I've got to stop that a little bit. I'm an Enneagram 2, and I will just give and give and give and give and give. And so I've got to take that back. So I am going to stop not having boundaries with people.
I'm going to stop giving away everything that I have for free.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. So I think that that's like my biggest thing is I have to stop focusing on everyone else, and I have to take time for myself. And there's a time and place for that, and I completely understand that. But like I said before, I kind of feel like I lost myself, and so I have to get a little bit of that back.
So with that being said, what does a really big win look like for you at the end of this year? Because this is a hard thing to really put a name to. It's a little bit intangible, but it's really, really important in terms of like you've recognized an area of yourself in your life that needs attention, which kudos to you. It's hard to allow yourself, if you are used to being that person who's like giving, it can feel so indulgent and I hope that I'm not like projecting here, but it can feel indulgent to like take that energy and bring it back to you. And I think that that's a really natural place for you to be at. I love this journey for you, but at the end of the year, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? How does that make you feel at the end of the year?
Yeah. So, I guess in 2019, I decided to write my goals every single day out like I had achieved them. And one of the biggest things, or one of the things that I wrote, I've accomplished so many of those, which is incredible. It was like, what do you want your life to look like in 5 years? And I've hit almost all of them, and I'm so excited about that. But one thing is I always wrote to myself, you are taking care of your mental health and your physical health. You are the person that does that. And so I think that for me, and bringing it all back to self-care and like mental health and physical health, that looks like making sure that I am on a nutrition journey. I am on a walking journey. I am reading a certain amount of books. And so while it's hard to put a name or a metric on kind of what I said to like bring it back to self-care, I think if I were to break that down into a couple of different things, that's what that looks like for me.
I love that. So often when we're talking about growth, we see that curve line for business going up. And what happens over time is the personal happiness curve line goes down. Because when we're focusing on the business and like getting to the next level, a lot of times we kind of kid ourselves that that's a season that we're in when we're just sacrificing everything to get there. And we feel like that sacrifice is necessary, the sacrifice of our personal health, of our families, of our relationships. And that's why for so long, you hear that more money, more problem type situation where it's like you see these people who are really successful, but they are lacking deep happiness and connection with others. And one thing that I've always been really fascinated by is like, how can we have both lines going at the same time? You know, how can we make sure we're on the right trajectory in both areas? And I feel like one of the things that I'm just so honored to be surrounded by you guys is you all in your own ways are identifying what that needs to look like for you. And making sure that it's not just about like the deal and the numbers and the growth. While those are super important, a lot of times those are byproducts of paying attention to these areas where you guys are very invested in. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah. And that, oh, sorry, Abe.
No, I was going to say actually, like just something like maybe a piece of advice on that too, because I understand what that's like for sure, especially like before real estate, having spent so many years in a job where I barely took time off. I was at work 60, 70 hours a week. And I've been reading this book, and this has nothing to do with I guess like our inner lives, I think. But I've been reading a finance book called I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. One of the best books. If you need to know a little bit about finance and how to run your accounts and stuff, that's great. But one of his principles in that book is what he calls a conscious spending plan. It's not really like a budget. It's actually a way to spend your money, not to just save it. And it includes savings. But the interesting thing about it is one of the principles in there is what's called guilt-free spending. It's that you should set aside money that is something that you enjoy and things that you do. And I think that we have to look at things like that in our time too, not just in our finances, not just in our budget or whatever, but we have to look at that in our lives overall, that like, what is guilt-free spending? And I think that we have to be able to spend time on ourselves guilt-free. We have to give ourselves some mornings. We have to give ourselves some weekends. We have to give ourselves vacations. Like we have to be able to do those things, and we have to do them guilt-free. We can't feel guilty about leaving. And so I think if you can take a principle like that and try to figure out a way to apply it to your life and understand. And something that I learned, I'm going to give a shout out to my Bold crew here for Keller Williams. But one of the things that our coach in Bold, these last couple of times that I went, talked about was that he schedules his vacations out for the year, and he books them, pays for them, and gets them going. And obviously we can't all do that. You know, he's pretty well set in his business and everything. But I think the further ahead we can consider those things and do those things, the better off we are, because once it's paid for, you're not saying no. You know, you're going to go on that vacation. You're going to take that weekend. You're going to do those things. So just my 2 cents on that for you.
That's a great perspective. Thanks, Abe.
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to add, I actually remembered while you were talking, Stefanie, and I think it kind of all goes together here. The thing that I really wanted to stop doing was comparing myself to others. The only person that you can actually compare yourself to on this journey, and I've started saying it to my child so that like I'm remembering it too, is yourself. So I can only compare myself to myself last year or yesterday or last week, whatever it is. And so I have to take that also into consideration, because I think that sometimes that drives you to go like, oh, I'm not doing enough, so I've got to push harder. I've got to push harder, right? And so you've got this like vision of like what a perfect scenario should look like, so similar to Abe. So like, oh, it's so great to schedule your vacation out, and I love that you can take the time, but you also can't compare yourself if you're not there yet, right? You have to say that's something that I can look to achieve as a goal, right? Something that I can track. But until then, I'm okay because I'm doing better than yesterday or last week or last year or whatever that looks like.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. That's a perfect segue into the next question that I had for the panel here on the Fireside Chat. What does balance look like for us these days? And I think that I don't want you guys to feel like balance has to look any one way, right? Because depending on what season of life you're in, balance is going to look different for all of us. Like for me, I'm not in balance right now because I have an infant who needs to eat around the clock, and I'm the only one who can do that. So it's like it's a really weird season of life that I'm in, but I understand that it is temporary. So I want to hear from you guys what balance looks like in 2023, and if there's anything specifically you're doing along these lines. I feel like that kind of ties into that conversation we just had. So Abe, if you want to lead it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for me, balance has been setting some boundaries when it comes to, and it's still so difficult and it takes time to adjust to it, but trying to set some boundaries on when I'm using my phone, when I'm taking calls and not taking calls, just being, on this for 45 minutes so far. It's like you're the phone's near, you got to set it down, turn it off, turn it, the screen can't light up. And it's so difficult because I think we're so in tune with like trying to answer things quickly. And it's another thing that I've learned that I love the phrasing of it was that like it's okay to run to the urgent, but not the important. And there's a huge difference, like when something, or I'm sorry, the opposite way. It's run to the important, not the urgent, because something that's important requires more attention than something that somebody might just feel is urgent. And I think that it's hard to really get used to that. So finding some balance and working towards balance in my free time like that. You know, probably one of the most successful things that I have, I guess, in my like overall plan of what I do, things I send out. My most successful newsletter so far was actually a digital version of my Letter of the Heart, and there was the last one that I did almost 3 months ago now, so I'm getting ready to do another one. But it was all about travel, and it was all about the experience that we had in Hawaii last year, and that trip, and just writing that letter, even just writing it, just taught me a lot about what my life needs to look like. And so for me, finding balance this year in traveling, doing things, and it doesn't have to be extravagant. Hawaii was a little bit over the top. It turns out we're actually planning a trip now to Barcelona. So it's going to be extravagant, but it's not all going to look like that. And that one is probably going to mean that we're not going to travel quite as much the rest of the year until maybe the holidays or something. But at the very least, we know that, hey, this is what is our passion outside of just living everyday life, right? These are the things that, we want to do in our free time. And so finding the balance to manage those things and to provide that for both my wife and I is something that I'm really, really looking forward to, and just working hard to make sure that I find that balance in.
I love that, Abe. Oh, Barcelona.
Yeah, maybe France too. We'll see. It depends.
Hey, dare to dream. I think that would be sweet. I want, and I selfishly want to see all the pictures and Instagram posts of a trip like that.
Sure.
I love that. Katelyn, what is it looking like for you this year?
Indeed. Excuse me if my voice wants to work.
That's okay.
I also love Spain. So Abe, I will be reaching out about Spain. It's one of my favorites. So it's funny, a segue into this is people talk about their word of the year, and I totally wasn't going to do that this year. And then it just came to me, and it's been in my face since, and that's present. So to be present. And I love what you said, because I'm recognizing we chase and we talk about work-life balance, but the truth is they're never completely even for an extended period of time, if they're ever even. And I'm recognizing that I've been in very much a driving season for the last year to try to get my business into the acceleration that it's in. And I'm thankful for that. But my mom actually had a recent, we'll call it an intervention. And she said, well, what about Kelton? And I was like, we're fine. It's my husband. And anyway, long story short, it put it more on my radar of focusing on my why, and that is Kelton. And he has supported me so well behind the scenes. Like, there are so many times I literally wouldn't have eaten breakfast, lunch, or dinner if he wasn't bringing it to me in my office. So just the biggest honor to my husband. But my goal this year is, our time is my number one priority. And if I have to lose business because there's a lack of respect that I choose my husband over the rest of the world, respectfully, someone else is supposed to serve you. And I bless that journey. And then the other big one for me is horses. That has evolved. So if you remember, a little over a year ago, on one of our coaching calls, I had the epiphany of, I'm going to reward myself with horse time after every closing. And that was going to be how I celebrated. Long story short, I have been gifted my dream barn with, if I had chased that horsey dream of mine in the direction that I wanted it to go, this new friend of mine is me if I had pursued that business with the resources available. Like, I literally, such a gift. So that has put it back on my radar that not only do I have good, safe, knowledgeable horse people in my life again, but I've officially started a savings account for my horse, and I'm determined to own by the end of 2023.
Ooh,
That's awesome.
So that feels super lofty, but that, if you look at my resume over the years, every decision I've ever made in my life is to get me closer to horses, and I'm tired of having excuses for not having them yet.
oh my gosh, that is so cool. You know what I love about that is you are being very intentional about understanding the kind of lifestyle you want your business to support, not the other way around.
Yeah. It's so easy to sit in that, like, chasing, feeling like you can't get there. But now it's just a matter of, if it doesn't support that, someone, I wish I knew who to give credit to, but someone said, what would future you do in this situation? Like, in the moment, what would the person you want to be, how would they respond or handle this situation? And future me would have at least one day a week dedicated to go see their horse. At least one day. And so now I've got, that's one thing I wish I had done last year, is have a rest day, unless there's just some big red flag fire that has to be addressed. Wednesdays are my personal day. That's when I'm meeting friends with no other motive. That's when I get my horse time. That is if I want to work out longer. And I think that's, as far as balance, just kind of what KarenAnn said, which I had the biggest respect for that, because we do need to do that. It is important to serve, but we need a place to pour out of from overflow, not out of an empty cup.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Thanks, Katelyn. Okay, KarenAnn, your turn.
Okay. Well, I've talked a lot about self-care at this
Yeah.
point. So that was actually my word of the year. And so kind of what that looks like. And I think for me, it's going to be a little bit about doing more instead of less. And just hear me out here. So, like, more water, right? Like, more outside time, more time with my family, more time focused on like similar to what Katelyn said, focus on the things that are important to me. You know, I've gotten to this place where I just like am so tired and I'm just like want to sit there and like just scroll or something, you know, because like I just need something mindless. And I've decided that like that doesn't serve me at all. It actually stresses me way out to get online and scroll. So I've started taking the time to like, oh, I could sit here and do this for 30 minutes, or I could go organize, you know, a closet in my room. Or like we've lived in this house for over a year, never unpacked my kids' books. We do go to the library. Don't worry, they were reading. But I never unpacked their books. And so I did that this weekend, and it took 30 minutes. It was not painful at all. And now they're easily going to grab them instead of trying to turn on a screen, which I say is a win in my book. And so I think adding more of just like the things that that are important, right? Like if it's not serving this why or this goal, then I'm not going to do it. And then something else that I think is really helping with balance is recently kind of discovering this organizational situation that I have in my head, and like creating these really cool workflows. And I'm just really super into that, and I get into a flow state. And I think that that's really what I'm focused on, is getting into that flow state.
I love that. So doing more of just what feels good and allowing that to contribute to like that bigger picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, so good, you guys. Okay. I feel like I could keep talking to you guys all day long. This topic is fascinating. And I feel like we all kind of like ended up grouping into kind of a common theme, which is really cool. To end, I want to just end by doing a quick roundtable of like in a couple words, you know, maybe a piece of advice for anyone listening, or maybe even a piece of advice to yourself for last year. Let's end with just like some parting words. And then we'll wrap up. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Abe, kick it off.
Yeah. So Katelyn mentioned like word of the year, and I actually had 2 words of the year for myself. And I don't usually do words of the year, so this was actually a new thing for me to kind of think about. And those 2 words are purpose and intent. And if I could give advice to anybody, it's to find your purpose and do everything that you do with intent. Be intentional about the things that you choose to do. You know, KarenAnn said she's going to be doing more of these things. Those are intentional. Those are things that are going to contribute to her life becoming better, her time being more free, and the self-care that she talked about. You know, so for me, finding purpose this year, the intention behind every action that I take, every, you know, decision that I make in my business, in my personal life, those are the things that I think are going to really kind of push me where I want to go this year. And you know, it's because the focus of those 2 words is almost like I don't know, like a GPS basically. It's like you know, you have this destination you want to hit, and you know, driving with purpose and driving with intent are the things that are going to get you there basically. And that's the way I see things for myself. And I think that that's something that anybody can take in and really, you know, take those values and put them to work basically for themselves.
It's your true north.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Thanks, Abe. Katelyn, your turn.
So mine's going to be short and sweet, and it ties into the be present, and it is just to be 100% on. If you are with your family, be with your family. If you are working, give it everything you can on behalf of your clients and the industry. So that would be mine. There's also just a bonus tip in that regard. If you have an iPhone, there are settings now that you can fully customize for work, personal, do not disturb, or sleep. That has been a game changer for me. So if it's in work mode, now my husband's on all 4, but if I'm in work mode, if you're an agent and we're not in a transaction, or you are not a mentor of mine, If you are not a client of mine or a business ally, you can't reach me during the time I have that setting on. And same thing with personal.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. Thank you, Katelyn. Very tactical too. Okay, KarenAnn, your turn.
Okay, so mine's going to be a little bit more reflective. So I want you to kind of think about the person that you want to be. Just like truly think about it, similar to kind of what I was saying with my goals. Think about who you want to be and then show up as that person. Just plain and simple, you know?
I got chills.
Well, it's so funny because for reality to actually like reflect that, you have to be that person now. So a lot of times, what I love about that, KarenAnn, is like, oh, I'll rest when I'm making this much money, or I'll take that vacation when the business is doing this, or I'll do this when, you know what I mean? I'll be able to when, but so often, and I think that's a common thing that we've all kind of honed in on today is understanding that in order to produce really cool results, it's got to start here. It's got to start with us, and it's got to start with having absolute clarity on what drives us, on what we need in the season, and allowing ourselves to reach that. Because anybody can talk about the metrics, anybody can talk about strategies, but if you're listening to this, you know what you need to be doing. Like you probably know what you should be doing. You know what prospecting works for you. You know that you need to be taking action. But more often than not, there's something in your way keeping you from taking that next step. And it's a lot of what we've discussed here. So I want to acknowledge the three of you. And thank you so much for sharing your story and what that looks like for you now. I think that this conversation is a critical missing piece in this industry. So I'm just really grateful that you guys were willing to be open and kind of share a little bit of what growth looks like to you in this season. And I'm just the luckiest girl in the world to be able to be aligned by awesome people like you guys.
I would say the same thing about all three of us, that we're so lucky to also be aligned with you and be part of what you have done for agents and for not just agents, but people, because we are people, not just agents. So thank you as well, Stefanie. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, guys.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, this was so fun. Appreciate you guys.